Good afternoon, early evening, everybody. I hope you're well. It's me, Patrick, and this is what is this? This is the Love Again podcast. I was getting ready to say the Patrick Shaver Show, but that's not what this is. This is the Love Again podcast. It's season two. This is the second part of our season two, and I'm excited about it. We have some great guests that are coming on, taking us through our holiday season. We're closing in on the end of the year. So it's been an intense year, but it's been good. And I'm excited to be back with you. I'm excited to have some time to what I haven't been able to do the first half of the year is to kind of pull back and sit down with some people that I care about, some friends and some new friends, and to kind of talk about life, love, and how we're processing life right now. And I'm so glad to have my good friend with us. Here's what's special about this episode. She is the first guest to come back to the show. So she's the first two-time guest. And the reason she's a two-time guest, because I remember we had some type of technical difficulty where something happened and we weren't able to finish. She was always like, oh, I'll come back. And we have her back. My very good friend, Tamil Curtis. How are you?
I'm great. It feels kind of weird. I'm, like breaking your cherry in this way, but I'm good.
Good. Life is full of firsts. And so let's have them.
Right, and we're having them together.
Absolutely. And I love it. So thank you. I know you're busy, and so thank you for taking some time out to come, being flexible with your schedule, for us to do this. I really, really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Yeah. How are you?
I'm good. I've learned to be truthful and take it one day at a time, and some days one moment at a time. And honestly, today I'm good.
Good. I'm good. I'm good too today, actually. So we're both in a good space.
That's good to do an interview when you're, in a good space. You don't have to manage your words and be careful with your words.
Yeah. Here's what we don't want to do. We don't want to make this interview between like Tyrese and Mary J. Blige, where like anything could happen and somebody may be.
Let me be clear. This is water.
And this is iced tea. That's all.
Just to be clear, when I take a sip, it's nothing heavy, people. It's just
so we're good. Usually, I don't have pre-interviews with our guests. Most often we're friends, so we know how to talk and have conversations. Or if it's a new guest that we have not talked about, I'll always ask them, is there something you don't want to talk about? Don't feel comfortable. We'll do that. But that is about as far as I go. For Tamil and I today, we did not do a pre-interview. I did ask her, should we talk about Lily and Lloyd? And she was like, no. And I was like, okay, sure. We'll let it go. Well, I'm sure it'll come up again down.
It'll come up down the road, but we won't
even have to bring it up. I've got all the money in my pocket versus all the money in your pocket. We haven't heard the last about it. So we'll just sit back.
God will have the final say.
Always. Speaking of gospel music, your mother and my father worked together for years, and they were based in Chicago. And yet, there's this vast network of music executives and radio announcers, and a whole bunch of people. Like I remember, like Ed Smith. We talking about our own Dennis Cole and all of these people, Jamila Muhammad and Snoopy and all the rest of people who really work to support artists. And it seems like for you, that's kind of your path, but you expanded on it. Like you're doing way more things that your mother, just the technology didn't allow her to do. what you're doing. So my question is, what you're doing now with the industry and developing artists and working with music labels. Did you choose to do it, or do you think that this was kind of like, well, a family business, and this is what I know, and this is what I've been around, and it's familiar. So let me choose to do this, or I just went along with it.
Um, few questions in that to answer. It was not the family business. So yes, I was reared and grew up in music. The side of my mom that a lot of people didn't know, she was a minister of music for 37 years. And so the ability to sing and hear and do and feel and like all of that stuff was of course embedded as a child. But when I first got interested in industry, it kind of was, I think I want to do this. And there was no handouts, there was no nothing from my mom. As a matter of fact, I don't think my mom actually supported me from a business standpoint to maybe like year 5.
Mhm.
Because for her, that meant this is something you really want to do. And in that time, I had seen the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent, the amazing, the scandals, the highs, the lows, all of that. And I was like, okay, this is something I really want to do. But then I was over it, so I stopped doing it. Like I walked away from the music business, music industry, and music ministry all simultaneously, and was like, I'm good on that. What brought me back to all of those things was someone that's very dear to my heart, which I'm kind of a gauge type person in the sense of the only way I would do that again is if this person acts or that person acts, right? Because of my love for them, I'll help navigate them. And that's what happened. Dominique Side called and she said, I'm ready to do the Christmas song we have been talking about. Mind you, I have been trying to get Dominique. She's an original BRC member like me, right? So I have been trying to get her to do a Christmas single probably close to a decade. Just do something. Fast forward 2020, she calls, she flies me down, and I meet her now business partner, Anthony Hall. And she had told Anthony, if I'm gonna do music, I can't do it without Tamil. Met Ant, and from day one, from the inception of Vegan Bay, the music group, the studios, I've been there. I was there like distribution liaison, their label liaison, their consultant, basic marketing strategist, that type of thing. And I was cool just doing that because it still didn't bring me back into the forefront. It didn't, I wasn't required to go and to do and any of those things. And then actually last year, this is probably one of the last things that my mom and I discussed. She was in rehab, and I was sitting on her rehab bed with her, and I was like, Ma, I don't know, but I kind of feel like I need to be doing more with Dom and Ant. And she, kind of looked, and she was like, what do you mean? FaceTime rung, right? It's Dom and Ant on FaceTime. Ant's driving. They're running a scenario past me of what's going on. I give them wisdom. And Ant literally looks over. You just need to come and take the label over. So I'm looking at him. I'm looking at my mom. I'm looking at him. I'm looking at mom. And I'm like, whoa, okay, well, maybe I need to. And so if I can be honest, it took a lot of trusting again. It took a lot of being vulnerable again. It took a lot because when I do and I give my all. I give from my heart. If I believe in you and you say you want to go to the moon, I'm going to help you build the rocket ship, right? I'm going to go find a fuel, like do something. And so to just not think that this relationship will be ruined, like, some in the past, not thinking that I would be taken advantage of and, things of that nature, because a lot happened prior to walking away. And so me being back in the business has actually been part of my road to wholeness, if you will, because I'm doing something that I love. I'm doing something that I'm good at. And, you know, if we want to be spiritual, I'm doing something that I'm called to do, that I'm purposed to do, right? And so I said all that to say it wasn't necessarily a family business. And the reason why I got into it is not the reason why I do it now.
I want to go back for a minute. You talked a little bit about the journey and some of the difficulties, you know, being taken advantage of and being let down. You and I share the same birthday window. I don't want to get into it because I know the Saints, and I'm not going to get into stars and all the other kind of stuff. But there's a lot of ways in which, there's a lot of ways in which our personalities are the same, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think what most people don't know, and I think they perceive us online in a way, and that's a whole nother conversation. I think people who really know us know how sensitive we are. And we feel things very, very, very deeply, which is why we can sometimes stay out of some relationships, some spaces, as a way to protect ourselves. And then when we're in it, there's no halfway. That is the problem sometimes for me, is like if I'm in it, like my gas is to the floor, like I'm flooring it. We in it, we going. And then when things don't work out that way, it's a horrible car crash. Everything's total, and now like
and you grieve it. Like you literally grieve it as if a death has taken place.
Oh my God. It's worse than a death in some ways, right? Because with a death, and we both experienced this with parents, it's like, well, okay, this is over. Like when my dad was sick, he was in the hospital for 7 months. We went back and forth. It was horrible. It was his body. When it was over, it was like, okay, well, it's over. My last breakup was almost a decade or so ago. It was literally, it was literally, I was physically ill, like, and even when it came to the church and everything, I just noticed like very early on, it was really, I was bleeding out and angry stuff coming out. I was like, okay, I can't do this. And I was like, I had to take off like 5 weeks from the church. Like I couldn't, like at home in the dark, you know, just.
Yeah.
And that's just the way we love. And that's just the way, you know, if we're going to be in it, we're going to be in it. And it takes a lot for us to recover and get back and say, oh, okay, you know, I'm healthy enough and I want to do it again. I perceive you're that way about your industry relationships and your businesses and what you do. And I'm asking, like, how was your process of healing, or like your ability to kind of recover yourself and to say, like you said, oh, you know, I'm ready to get back in it and kind of work again.
So I think I process everything but natural death the same way. I started what I call the resurrection rule. And that is, I'm not about to be tumbling with emotions and feelings more than 3 days. Anything past that, I'm going to be working or whatever. But, you know, if Jesus got up in 3 days, I'm literally like, and hear me, I'm you. When I tell you I'm done, I'm done. If I can be honest, my mind comes up with some of the most inappropriate and vengeful things that can happen, especially when it wasn't my fault, right? And all these scenarios and things and just feeling it. The shoulda, coulda, wouldas. Automatically taking full ownership of why, and God forbid if it's where it's not even a proper line of communication,
closure,
and there's not any closure that's there, and so you just abruptly, like, I don't believe in that. Oh, just cut them off. No, have conversations, because it very well can be fixed. Some things can be reconciled, even if we're not still together, even if we don't work together. I believe we can still be respectable and honorable in parting. So when those things don't happen, it's devastating, because, like you said, I give my all. I'm 100% in. I mean, I've relocated to a new city where it's me, by myself, because of a dream that I believe in of someone else. Like, I'm all in with it. Literally, like, another $3,500 a month client, because I knew I wouldn't still be able to give them what they were getting from me in taking on. You know what I'm saying? So there are sacrifices that's made when I'm all in. And so I'm not going to stay in that place more than 3 days. Now, after that third day, that's not saying I'm not going to feel it, but I'm not going to grieve it as much. I'm going to start processing. I'm going to start allowing myself to heal. Like, my last relationship, it jacked me up in ways that I had not been jacked up, because it affected my self-esteem, right? It affected I had never, ever, for the most part, been an insecure person. And Pat, I mean, I got to a point of insecurity that I went into a shell. And so if I would hear a compliment, I'm questioning motives.
Right.
Because I had been in this for so long and wasn't getting that. Right. And so that taught me how to maintain realistic expectations and boundaries.
Let's talk a little bit about breaking up, right? You said closure, and I always say this, that women, when the relationship doesn't work out, most oftentimes, not all the time, but sometimes, maybe half, maybe a little more than half, women basically want to exit interview, right? Like, we need to sit down, discuss what went wrong, and kind of forge a path forward. I don't think men need that, because, like you said, if it could be fixed, then that's a conversation to say, well, okay, you're not feeling something. This is what you need. You're putting on the table saying, hey, I want to stay, but I can't stay if things persist. How can we work this out? Well, that's a working conversation. Right. If you come to me and say, I need to get out of this and I don't want to be here anymore, most dudes are going to be, half maybe, going to be like, okay, fine. Like, you've made up your mind. You've had a conversation with yourself or with whoever you take counsel with, and this is the decision that you have made, and it's just informing me of your decision. I wasn't in on the process.
But you know what? I don't know if it's a half thing. Like, and here's why I say that. And it's always been a thing when it comes to you all and what you would consider rejection. That thing is on a whole nother level now, that I think a lot of people stay out of fear of what's going to happen if they actually leave. Right. And I think the older we get, the more we will tolerate and settle, because we're not really trying to get to know somebody else in the way that we've gotten to know this person, right? And then, I don't know, it's that thing. Like, I'm you for the most part. Closure for me may not even be a conversation, but it's actually saying something, right? Which I'm very vocal. And I tell people all the time, when you, especially, you know, dealing with the type of personality that I have. I don't want to say the type of sign, because again, the saints don't know how to, but with the type of personality that I have, I am a natural fighter. So I'm going to fight for the relationship. I'm going to fight for the connection, right? At the point that I stop fighting, I'm done. So a lot of times, and I can honestly say I checked out mentally and emotionally before I walked away.
Sure.
Like I was just going through the motions because I was content with some level of connectivity, right? But at the point that things happened and they didn't show up, when those things happened, they were not present. I could not tangibly even feel them, let alone see them. That told me I did not matter the way that I thought I mattered all those years.
Yeah.
So there was nothing to be said at that point, right? There was nothing to discuss at that point. It was you know what? Yeah, this
because it turns, right? We start perceiving that what you're doing is saying something to me, right? You can give me lip service all day long, but I'm watching your actions, and the way you care or don't care about me says to me how you really feel about me, right? And if I need you and I can't hold your hand, and you're not caring about holding my hand through what I'm going through, that tells me you don't care. You absolutely care nothing about me. So, why am I in this? Like, okay,
right.
It's time to go. Like, this is.
And I knew. Here's the thing: I knew it was over long before it was over. But that point of being the age that I was and not wanting to start over, because let me say this, and this may sound, you know, like a total oxymoron, an opposite of what I'm saying. He is a very good man. He is a provider. So if that's all that a woman needs, is just that stability, and you know, ensuring that they're going to be okay. He's perfect. And believe it or not, we're still, you know, friends with each other. It just wasn't what I needed, right? Sure. And being who I am and what I do, I don't want to have to still pick the restaurants every time. I don't want to make all the plans every time. I don't want to, and then I don't want to give suggestions and it's an automatic no, right? So then it got to the point that I stopped asking. And so it became, oh, well, why didn't you say something? You've literally said no 12 other times. So why am I going to ask you again if 12 times prior to it's always been no? You know what I mean? It was that type of thing. And so, like I said, when it got to a point where life lifed me in a way that I wasn't expecting last year, was really when it was like, you know, because we hadn't even seen each other in months, because I, in a sense, was in the process of transition and relocating, and like all this stuff was happening, right? So the most that we had was, you know, text messages or FaceTime, or I FaceTime with you, you know what I'm saying? Like I FaceTime with people that matter. So it's not like that even is enough anymore. I knew, but because of everything that had been lacking, you know, prior to, like it really jacked my head up until I no longer cared.
Yeah.
And once I no longer cared, I found me again. And then I found me in a way that I didn't even realize existed prior to losing me.
Yeah. I think that when we're early on, at least for me, my early breakups were really messy. You know, I felt like that was the only way for us to break up. We had to have some big argument and be angry, say mean things to each other, and walk away. I think when you get older, you realize, like,
I could have done that because I would fight. So,
okay, well, I'm glad you didn't do that. Yeah, I'm glad you didn't. I'm glad you didn't. Thank God.
Listen, like in that moment, I really had a, oh God, I thank you. Like it was a Selah. Because I was violent. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
No, we not about to your mama this. We not about to you. No, bro. Because
I think you get older. I was saying like I grew out of that, and I realized
out of that that's not required now. You don't think?
Oh no! I can't do that kind of. Yeah, no, I can't do that kind of energy. And I think as I've gotten older, my breakups when we needed to go our separate ways was like, look, it's not that you're not a great person or a great woman. That's not the issue. It's just that you're not great for me or I'm not great for you. And that's compatibility issues. That's not like somebody cheated or somebody violated the relationship in some horrific ways. They have nothing to do with that. It's just like you and I don't connect in ways where I feel loved or you feel affirmed or whatever. And it's just like, well, if we can't meet each other's needs like that, then we really shouldn't be together. And I think it does take that kind of early distortions and horrible breakups and all that to really appreciate the fact that we don't have to spend that kind of energy. Like I'm not.
I'm not. But you know, the flip of that is my early life, I can't really say that I was a relational person.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can literally count on my hand the number of actual boyfriends, as in we were public or we were committed in that regard. We was, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I was not a get in where you fit in. It was more so if I had time for you. And that goes back to a lot of what I saw growing up, right?
Yeah.
I come from a family that had, you know, histories of infidelity and things of that nature and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just determined I wasn't going to do that in that regard. So if that means, you know, we're dating, we're messing around, you know, whatever it was nothing that was labeled to the point of, and that might be why it was never really murky or messy. Because those that I did feel that break with, that anger would be there, because then it's like, I have spent this time with you and now we're parting ways.
Yeah.
Right. A friend of mine, he literally said to me, he said, if I was to get married again and it didn't work, I don't know what I would have left of me. And that was such a, you know what I'm saying, moment. Because, you know, they give their all. They're 100% in. They're committed. And then we're saying the two becomes one, and then you're splitting that person in half. So if now this half person has had to become whole in a half, right? And making that 50 feel like 100, then what happens if that 50 that feels like it's 100 doesn't work?
Yeah.
It made sense to me. So I think that was the flip of me. I would have been the like player of the bunch or whatever. You know what I'm saying? I was the, you know.
I try to I try to fast forward in my head about death, right? Because it's inevitable. Mm-hmm. My death is inevitable. All humans, we die. It is what it is. And I imagine if I'm able to, you know, fall asleep and die in my bed, I would like to think that I would be thinking about all the love that I did have in my life. Even if I didn't get to keep it, even if it wasn't forever, because clearly if I'm dying, then nothing is forever, right? This myth about love is forever, ever after is just a myth. All we have is right now. And for me, what I've had to do to kind of counter the bitterness of being left or rejected or a breakup is to say, well, I'm disappointed that this didn't work out the way I wanted it to work out. But if it was for a month, if I was happy, if I felt love, if I had somebody's hand to hold, if someone talked to me in that month, that is way more than a lot of people had. And I can be grateful for that.
Sure.
And perhaps if nobody's holding my hand when I pass away, hopefully in those moments, my mind will go back to like, oh, I was loved when I was here. I got to love somebody. Somebody got to love me, and perhaps that made the journey worth it. Now, you don't think like that. Like when I was 22 and getting a divorce or whatever, this is much more emotionally
right.
dramatic and violent than that. Over the years, I think what's changed me is not just the breakups, but people who raised me and have meant a lot to me that have passed away. And, they got sick, and it's like, I don't get to keep you forever. But when you were here, you supported me, you loved me, you affirmed me, made me feel special. And I had that, which is way more than what other people had. And so I think.
But Pat, do you think that at some point on this Christian Jubilee, that you'll get married again? Can you see yourself in the future settled down again?
Funny you should ask that. I had a conversation with a friend of mine yesterday. I do want to get married again. I think it's what's part of what's next for my life. And a lot of things drive that. Number one, I think I am the best version of myself that I've been. You do the work, and hopefully, you offer somebody something that's not so broken and battered, beaten. So there's that. Number two is, as a pastor and just as a person, the losses in our life accumulate. Like, you get 40 and it's like people who raised you and some friends don't make it. The people in your own age group don't make it as far. And it's like, my life can't be all about my losses and sadness and going to funerals. Like I can't live like that. And it's like, well, if you're not intentional about making choices to have joy and to have happiness and have connection, then your life is just going to be a bunch of losses, and we're going to be just high functioning, depressed people, sad people all the time. It's like, yeah, I don't want that. And so I do want to marry. I do want a family. You would think that, oh, I wish I could have done this. My father has seen, some of grandkids and all the like. And I have a mother who's still alive, and I want her to see, her grandchildren and the like. But here's the thing: that's not going to happen if I stay home all the time, right? Like I have to actually.
Unless you
I actually have to leave the house and like engage the world and be open and all that other. So it's baby steps. We're working we getting one step at a time. Yeah, I'm rationally, theoretically, I'm not emotionally. I think I'm there, and then I need to, figure out the other steps. Then there's another question. Well, what about you?
So I've never been married. And I actually always thought marriage was a joke at first, initially. And again, that's because of the marriages that I saw. And so I hear people all the time, especially online, make these erroneous statements like, we're not our grandparent generation and this, that, and other. Well, being the age that I am, I understand that a lot of my grandparents and parents even were together because they had no other choice, especially as women, right? I was old enough when my mother took her grandmother to open up her first bank account.
Mm.
Right? I was old enough. I was born. This is saying something, that I was born when my mother, my grandmother, and my great grandmother all was able to get credit in their name.
Mhm.
So it's not that generation believed in love more. They believed in survival more.
Absolutely.
So I've seen a lot. I saw a
Can
lot.
can I add something to that? First of all,
Absolutely.
America didn't even recognize black marriages till it was like, I think, late 60s, 70s, number one.
It was either 66 or 67.
Right. So number one, so there was no
And they
legal
still were not
recourse.
recognizing interracial marriages until I think it was
Exactly, much later,
70.
significantly later than that.
Right.
So women had no recourse but to stay. Like if the state didn't recognize you were married, then they were not going to recognize the divorce. Like, so all of these myths about our grandparents stayed together 50 something years, it just sounds more like a hostage situation sometimes than actual this myth about their love was so much better. And then granddad lived in a time where he could have a whole nother family 5 miles away, right?
He is in the
There
same.
was no social media. She didn't have a car. Like, it wasn't like she could drive down to another town and check up on him. She stayed. He kept her at home, and he had another family, another town home, and he stayed married to everybody. Like, it was. So this whole myth idea, and I'm not. I think marriage is great and it's wonderful and all, but this idea that we need to live into this myth about love that they had. Some of them had great marriages. I want to affirm that some of them had great marriages and stayed.
Sure, I mean, amazing. I know my mom's godparents. One of her set of godparents. The Jacksons knew each other 2 weeks before they got married, and they were together until death did them part.
Yeah.
And they had a whole bunch of kids to show their love. Like, in that regard, Papa Jackson believed in being fruitful and multiplying. And I remember, prior to his death, you knew they loved each other. Like there are some marriages from generations prior. Case in point, if you ever see Archbishop Ralph Dennis and Lady D. Dennis together, it is obvious that they're friends. It is obvious that they like each other, right? It is obvious that this is not no church front. This is not no keeping up with the Joneses. We're not going into separate rooms when we get home. So there are some examples that I've been able to see. Initially, the examples were not there. So I didn't believe in forever, right? I didn't believe, and I honestly didn't necessarily think it was possible because of, in a sense, where I came from and, personality and, but I'm at an age now where I believe that there is that one person that, while I didn't believe in it before, I can't imagine not doing life with that.
Yeah.
I do believe that exists now for me. I do believe that I can actually be married outside of doing it because it's church or doing it as a business transaction for church, right? Yeah. That we can actually like each other. We can actually be friends. And I have, if you will, godly examples. There is Danny and Rhonda Pettigrew in Jackson, Tennessee. They're friends. Like they have offices together, right? So they work and do life and everything. Even the dynamic of them in ministry, right? Danny is still the head in how things are set up. When I look at my own pastor, Jason Nelson and Tanya Nelson, it's evident, it's so clear that they're friends. And I think that is probably one of the most important parts for me. I need somebody that I can text while we're sitting next to each other, like, did you see that? And nobody know why we're clowning, right?
Right,
I
right.
want that 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 companionship is there. I
Mm-hmm.
want someone who understands my introvertism. That we don't necessarily have to be doing a whole lot. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
can be in the room, you can be in the studying, but
Mm-hmm.
I can still feel that you are present and close and
Yeah.
around, right?
Yeah.
That level of comfort and security, being able to legit be a girly girl and fall back. I love everything about being, submitted. I love everything about not being a boss.
Mm-hmm.
I love being led. You know what I'm saying? So I look
Mm-hmm.
forward to being with someone that I can do all those things with. And we actually like, so if by chance something physically happens, I really pray
Mm-hmm.
nothing physically happens to me and my husband at least for about 25 years because
Yeah.
I got some time to make up for. And you know,
Right, right. Amen. Yeah, got some time. Yeah.
if by chance that
You
was to
can
happen,
redeem the time. That's what he said. Now.
and
It does.
listen, I, I almost went all the way left. I caught
Okay.
it.
No, I get it.
But I'm saying if by chance that
Mm-hmm.
was to happen,
Mm-hmm.
we're friends, and because we're friends, we can still do life together. We can
Yeah.
find alternatives.
Yeah.
We can do what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I'm finally at that point where I believe that. Do I think I will physically have children? No.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be a plus to me if,
Mm-hmm.
who I was with
Mm-hmm.
uh, had children, or, are you open to
Yeah.
surrogacy in some form? Are you
Sure.
open to adoption? Like what does family unit look like for?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I so want that for you. Oh my God. Yeah. I think in the best of our relationships, um it brings out a part of ourselves that was hidden away and locked, whatever, and we become more fully ourselves. I wanna ask you a question, and then I want to ask you another question. I'm gonna let you go, but I want to take a time
Okay,
out. Do you have your earpods? Because your audio is coming in and out just a little bit, and I want to make sure we're clear.
I
Or
don't.
headphones.
Let me see.
Okay.
Is that better?
Yeah. Yeah, that is better. Okay. Good. I want to run something by you. Ask you what you think about it. We live in a very I hear a lot of chatter online, especially amongst black men and women, and it's all about what you bring to the table, and there's pundits says, well, I if I get married, someone I heard a woman say, well, if I get married, then he's supposed to pay for everything, and yada yada yada. And we live in a transactional time, and so much that down to just the base level. Um, OnlyFans is just a transaction for whatever is needful, whether I need to see your smile or something else. I just pay a fee. That's a transaction. You just give me what I want. We walk away from it. Um, I'm interested in when you hear public conversations. I know what I hear, and what I hear is like, well, if I'm just a transaction, if I'm just a means for you to have an extra set of resources for you to live comfortably, then how do I feel loved and affirmed, and how do we connect? In so much that I heard one woman say that I want to marry somebody who we have the same hustle, and we're gonna chase the bag together. And I'm like, okay, well, if we do that and we're both chasing the bag at the same level, then how are we? I'm like, where are we? And it seems like we just live in a very transactional space. And so I'm asking women who I think are smart, how are you perceiving this conversation? And is it some merit? that he needs to be able to provide, like, you know, grandpa and them did, and she just stayed home. And I don't know if she would say her life was a soft life, even if she didn't work. I think
it was a
Yeah.
whole lot. Yeah, I can think of everything that. So I was blessed to know my great grandparents on my mother's side, my maternal great grandparents, right?
Mhm.
My great grandmother, Middle Lou Strong, and from the time that I can remember, never worked, right? But she worked because every morning she was up to make sure that breakfast was done, right? She was walking to the laundromat in Woodlawn to wash clothes to make sure that his clothes and stuff was clean and things of that nature.
Mhm.
I think I'm a very realistic person, right? If I can be honest, I never wanted the level of success that I have single. And that is because
We are such the same. Gosh, we are so alike. So
I never wanted the level of success that I have single because of all the misconceptions and things that I was told and I heard. Right, you know, you won't ever find a man that can compete or whatever. First of all, I don't need him to compete. Right, you'll never find somebody that'll be understanding and won't be intimidated. You know, like shut the hell up. Okay, with that. But I didn't unconsciously. I never wanted it. Now that I'm here, it makes me appreciate the space so much more. That I want someone that I can do life with, meaning us being together, we don't become liabilities to either one, right? Us being together is about taking what we have separately and combining and building what we can collectively, right? Us being together can actually mean I'll never forget. And I have an ex-boyfriend that when I first came off the road with the life, and I ain't know about no shacking, right? Which was like totally. He was a Baptist boy, so that's all they did was shack. Yeah, I'm this, you know, but he lived in Westmont, so driving back and forth constantly from Westmont to Woodlawn and Woodlawn to Westmont. A lot that, you know, it went from, let's say, staying a weekend to staying a whole week to I literally looked up and was like, oh, I live with him. I live with him. Like, wait a minute, hold on. What's happening? And during that time, he lost his job. And for 3 months, I was the breadwinner. You know what I'm saying? And I told him the first 60 days, I don't want you to look for a job. I need you to, first and foremost, make sure you're not harboring anything based upon how you were let go from that one, right? I want you to be able to breathe, because as a Black man, I don't think you've ever had an opportunity to just breathe since you've entered into adulthood. And then I want you to know, is this really the field that you want to stay in or not, right? So for the first 60 days, that there was no looking for another job. And I held it down, right? I said that to say, I don't have an issue if life happens. Holding it down. That doesn't make my man any less of a man. That doesn't, you know, take away from him being the head. You know what I'm saying? And the leader, the alpha, like none of that changes. And so I think the way that I approach relationship is much different. I'm looking at compatibility. I'm looking at, first and foremost, do I feel safe with you? Because as a Black woman, working the different fields that I do, I can't tell you that I feel safe. So do I feel safe with you? Do I feel protected? I know you can't fight every battle that you know I face, but just to know that you still got me while I face it. I do need someone who spiritually is at that point that I can have an intellectual conversation with them, right? That I know, if we were to talk about homiletics and homiletics, you understand what it is that we're talking about, right? If we were to really digest, why we have specific prayer requests and what we're believing for, I can't lead spiritually. So that would have to be the lead. Everything else, I think it falls into place. And me being the type of woman that I am, if he has not ascended to his throne yet, him being with me will absolutely send him to the palace.
So I experienced the same thing. When I first started pastoring, I resented, hated even, deeply resented this idea that because I was single, that the only reason people came to my church was because I was single. And when the book came out and I was doing a lot of high profile stuff and in some rooms and got some great opportunities, it made me feel very vulnerable because I was like, I don't feel like, I have anybody with me that has my back, and this is way too many sensory, it's too much and too many people, and it just took a lot of energy, and I was like, I don't like this. And then, I was in Essence, and then after that, like somebody found my home address and they were writing me and sending me stuff in the mail, and I'm like, whoa, this is not what I want, or I don't want to be successful alone, right? I can be successful and do what I need to do, but I don't want to do that alone. In so much that not necessarily that's the vulnerability. I've been at big swanky galas and fundraisers and dinners and sitting down with some of the most brilliant, popular people in the world and thought to myself, this means nothing because I have nobody to share it with. Like, there's nobody for me to be next to and be like, oh, can you believe that?
Right. Rubbing your leg like, babe, you did it. You're here.
Right. Like I was like, I don't want to do this alone, and this feels dumb. And so I shrunk myself, or I kind of pulled away, or I didn't push probably the church, and I didn't push the other stuff like I wanted to, because I was like, I don't want to do this by myself. I don't want to do this I don't want to be successful by myself. It's too many eyes, that's too vulnerability. If I can't come home and leave all of that outside, and we have our own space and our own world, and this is where I recharge and that I don't want it, right? And so it's not that sometimes you don't have the ability to be successful. I think sometimes you choose not to be as successful when like I don't want to. I ain't finna be out here like Tyrese or whatever. Just out. But I'm not doing having some break because
I want to make sure that you see my eyes fully right now. I want to choose my words. So here's the thing with that, right? Mm-hmm. I think that it's twofold, because we have said for so long, we want you to feel safe enough to be vulnerable, right? We want you to feel safe enough that you trust with your emotions, that if you are emoting, we're not going to, look at you differently. And I think he's taking that to the extreme.
And I love Tyrese, so I'm not making fun of anybody's mental and emotional space.
I love him. I think he needs better friends.
I just don't want to be that. Like that could have been me, and I was like,
I mean, look, I could have been out here being a Krishan, right?
Right.
I get it. Trust me, I get it. I'm not saying I don't understand it, because I understand it. I am sympathetic and empathetic of it. However, I think there is a line that needs to be drawn in the sand. And when you know that there's like, I have no issue. I don't feel no kind of way of anything from telling people I have a therapist. I have a pastor who absolutely covers me and prays for me and supports me and pushes me and corrects me and all of that. And I also have a therapist that helps to hold me accountable and does the soul searching and the soul, digging out and understanding psychology the way that I do and sociology the way that I do. It actually makes the word come alive a whole lot better. Sure. Right. And so I think we need that more.
Essential. I don't see how people don't do it, especially if you're pastoring and you're working in cultures and situations, you're dealing with a lot of people and it's a lot of caregiving and all the like. I don't see how they don't do it. And thank God. And I feel sorry for our previous generations who did not have that as an option for them, because Lord knows my parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, they needed therapy. I'm sorry that they had to suffer in ways that they had to suffer, but we don't have to, and I choose not to. So I'm gonna have the Holy Ghost, and I'm going to see my therapist every week, because I have to care about my interior life, not the spiritual part of it it's one part of it. But all of my problems aren't spiritual problems. Like they're emotional and relational and
emotional. They're relational. They're we're products of our environment. People don't really dig into this, but we are actually products of our DNA. And so understanding our DNA, understanding our lineage, understanding that environment helps us to better understand ourselves, right? Yeah. So I said all that to say, I think, and here's the thing, a friend is more than somebody I can kick it with. A friend is more than somebody that I can turn up with. A friend is somebody that I can text and I can say, I'm not doing okay. You know what I'm saying? I can call you a friend, because in this last year, there have been moments and I knew you related and you understood it. So even if my brain was processing it in a very inappropriate way that, would make somebody else look at me like, did she even like her mom? Like, what's going on? What's happening? Right. I could say I'm not okay and not be judged, not be rebuked, not being even diagnosed, if you will, because I think that's the issue that we have as believers when it comes to church. We want to tell people how to grieve and how long they should grieve, right? It's why I don't like Ty Trippett's Only One Night song, right? Because it's more than one night, even though we know one day is as of 1,000, with God, we know all of this, but it's just it gives a false doctrine of hope to people. Yeah. That then if they're not okay after a certain amount of time, then something is wrong with them. You're going through life, and with death, it's so much that happens after the funeral.
It doesn't start happening till after the.
You know what I'm saying? You gotta turn off their lights and cut off the phone and shut down the bank account, and you actually get the death certificates in the mail, and I'm talking about all of these things happening. That's like, oh man, they really are dead. Yeah. They're really not coming back. Like you got to be prepared for that. Yeah. And so you need people that you can actually feel safe and be safe with. And so I'm grateful that I have that. And I think because of that, it actually has shown me, you know what, girl, you really are, you got that personality that we got, however,
Right.
You still deserve love. You're still worthy of love. You still can have love. You are enough as is to be loved, right? You don't necessarily have to change to be loved. There is somebody that's willing to love you with your quirks, right? And your isms and your schisms. There is somebody that will be okay. So you don't have to make this big compromise to be with them. I believe that exists now.
Yeah, so I'm gonna let you go because we said it's almost time. Thank you for doing this again. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'll do it again. Like, come on, I could do it
Good.
three.
Yeah, come on. Absolutely. It's September, and if I remember correctly, this is an anniversary month. Is it of your mom's passing?
So my dad passed August 3rd,
Okay,
2021. Passed August 28th of 2022.
got you. Okay,
September is when we actually did the services and everything.
got you. I am coming up on the anniversary of my father's transition. Was 9 years ago, almost 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And we were talking about before we started recording. We were talking about this book that I'm reading called Necessary Losses. I'm rereading it actually again. I was talking about it, and I want to know: have you started to assess how the losses that you experience and the path that you're on in your grief to make sense of those losses? How has it changed you? Um, has it changed you? Has it changed you for the worse, or is there any virtue, um, any stream, small trickle of virtue that you can see in what you had to lose?
I can honestly say that August 28th, when my mom died, Tamil, the Tamil that everyone already knew, the Tamil that I was comfortable being, the Tamil that um, knew how to navigate, right?
Mhm.
Died. And I had to not only learn how to do life without her, as I was learning how to do without Pops. Um, I had to learn what life meant again. I needed to know why all of a sudden those things that would normally set me off, it'd just be like,
Mhm.
right? I needed to know why I was feeling what I was feeling now. I needed to know why I had this need to be even more intentional, even, excuse me, in confrontation.
Mhm.
I felt like I had to become more intentional. And I can honestly say, I think I'm at a point of my grief where I'm unwrapping the gift that it is.
Mhm.
Because I would not be the woman that's on this with you now had I not experienced that type of grief. And here's the thing, I've grieved before, right?
Mhm.
This is coming from a woman that has lost everything twice.
Mhm.
This is coming from a woman who has actually coded on an operating table
Mhm.
before, right? This is coming from someone who has literally had to deal with the fact of, doctors telling her since she was 18 she would never be able to be a mom, and that was always one of my desires. So I had to grieve that and resolve it, right? Well, it's not like I hadn't had anything big or traumatic, or you know what I mean. I've lived life. I live now with a chronic pain illness that's uncurable,
Mhm.
right? Nothing prepared. My master's degree is in pastoral counseling with the emphasis in grief management. That prepared me for what I had,
Mhm.
but because of what I went through, I literally have such a peace now that I did not have prior. I can say, and life is not perfect. There's still a lot of stuff. There's nothing broken and there's nothing missing in my life right now, right? Even the moments that I do sometimes feel lonely, it doesn't last now because this is probably the happiest I have ever been in my life. Like I'm literally sitting in my own space that I've been able to maintain on my own for the last 6 months, right?
Mhm.
And this is after losing it all and everything happening, and for the most part, technically being homeless for 7 months because I turned in my keys to my townhome in July of last year, anticipating being in something August 1st, and that didn't happen because mom got sick. Right? I didn't get the keys. So that's from July. I didn't get the keys to my place until March. Right? But even in that, while grieving, this is the happiest I have ever been. This is probably the most confident that I've ever been. This is probably, I would even go so far as say the most love that I've ever felt in my life. I am surrounded by some amazing people who honor me the way that I honor others. I'm surrounded by some amazing people who love me the way that I love others. So, yeah.
Okay. I totally understand. And your screen froze a little bit. You're still there though, right?
It should be, because I don't know what happened. The Wi-Fi did something.
Okay. Well, it's fine. We'll keep talking. It'll come back. You said something that I think is so profound. And I totally understand it now that I didn't understand before, that loss can be a gift in some ways. And I know we don't see it that way, but if we look over our shoulders though, and I am talking about specifically my father's death. My grandmother passed, and then my dad passed maybe 13 months later. So it was two people raised me with God. It was very, 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 very traumatic. And just grieving them and going on with life, and then one day deciding, oh, I want to go to law school, and all that, will take me away. There was no way I would have made that decision to do that had they been alive. And if you would have asked me to choose them or doing that, I would have chose them. Like I love them. I was loyal to them. I would be where they are. But in them not being here, it freed me, and it freed my imagination in a way to think like, oh, well, perhaps I could do more or be more or have more in my life. And in that way, the loss itself was a great gift that I experienced. And then when I processed it, it was like, well, all losses have been that way in some ways. When I looked at it, there wasn't a time where I lost something significant. Yes, it hurt. Yes, I maybe pouted, cried, threw tantrums like a baby. And then after it was over, she's going to come back. After it was over and I had some time to process it, you look back, it was like, oh, there you are.
There we go.
Like there's no loss that we can look at and not see them as gifts. And they pushed us forward, maybe by force. We didn't want to, but we had to adapt, and we grew into a piece of ourselves, a part of ourselves that we didn't even know existed.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah.
100%. Like, even when it comes to me and relationships and that, like, I'm not gonna like go completely into certain things that I believe or think or anything of that nature, but I've always known how to be a good woman for the man I was with while I was with him, right? But now I know I'm simply a good woman because I'm a good woman, right? So
Mhm.
it's on like a whole nother level as to
Mhm.
what's and why is what and all of those things.
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you for that. Um, your I appreciate all of this. It was a great conversation. It was a conversation I knew we were going to have months ago, and so thank you again for doing this. I'm going to let you go. You have all my love and support. Um, I got your back, and I feel like you got mine, and that's a great gift. Okay, well, there you are.
There I am. I had to literally change devices. Like I want
I get it. I
you
get
see
it.
that?
But thank you. Okay. Well, let's mute that so we don't get the echo.
I did. I literally closed it
Okay.
out. I don't know what's going on with it, but yeah, I was like,
I'm
no,
gonna
let
let you. I'm,
me.
I'm gonna let you go. I was just telling you thank you, and I appreciate your presence and your friendship in my life. And I hope you feel the same way. Um,
I do on every day except for those that end in a S.
those that what?
End in a S.
Yeah, I get it. So before I let you go, I do 5 quick questions, exit questions with our guests. So I want to run through them and you can handle it. You good? You good?
I'm good. Let's
Okay.
go.
Um, Number one, do you believe in love at first sight?
I believe in lust at first sight.
Okay. So that's a no.
Right. I believe that there can be chemistry at first sight. I believe that there can be lust. I don't know if I necessarily ascribe to love in its definitive way, but I think some form of it can
Mhm.
absolutely happen at first
Okay.
sight.
Um, what have you learned from loss?
I've learned that as relates to people and even things, I didn't need them to win the way that I
Mhm.
thought I did.
What have you learned from love?
Mm. I've literally learned that love is everything that Paul ascribed it to be. It is patient. It's absolutely kind. I would take it even to the thing of saying, love makes you considerate. Love makes you take risks. Um, love makes you vulnerable. Love can make you weak, but love teaches you how to trust, right? Love is everything and nothing at the same time. Love is resolve. Love is commitment. Love is showing up even when you feel like you don't have it in you to show up, right? Love is a choice. And so I think those are the things the most that I've learned um, is that love is a beautiful thing. Um, and it's something that I think everyone should experience at least once in their life. Not parental love, not just agape love.
Right.
You know, not
That good.
yeah, yeah.
Good love. Yeah.
Everyone needs to experience that at least once in their life.
Okay. What makes a good lover?
For me, ah,
Yeah, I mean,
someone that
yeah.
someone who has an imagination,
Mhm.
someone who is attentive,
Mhm.
someone who um, doesn't mind pushing the boundaries of their vulnerability with me.
Mhm.
Um, someone who trusts me,
Mhm.
and someone that has amazing stamina to keep up with me.
Okay. Um, When was the last question? When was the last time you cried because you were happy?
Saturday.
That's wonderful.
Saturday, I had a moment because, like I said, when you've lost it all, and what God has allowed me to mature, because in that loss, I worked on my credit, I worked on my stewardship, I worked on, you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
So this is mine. My name is the only name on the lease. There is no co-signer. There's nobody else's name, and I'm secretly getting mail. There's none of that.
Mm-hmm.
I went to wash before I went to the studio, and literally standing in my apartment, the fact that I don't have to go to a laundromat, and that washing machine started, and I just cried tears of
Get it?
gratitude.
No. Listen,
That
I get it.
this is,
It hits you, don't it? Like it,
and when I say hit, and it hit me that I actually could even be a place of refuge for someone, because I have a guest bedroom and bathroom, right?
yeah,
Like, you can have your own privacy.
yeah.
If you just need to get away, you need to lay your head down. You need to, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it was literally Saturday, and it was like, wow, I have been maintaining this successfully
Yeah.
for 6 months, and I'm grateful for that.
Won't he do it?
Won't he will.
Listen, won't he do it? I'm so happy. I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy you felt that. And you let yourself feel that. That's amazing. That's great. I love you. Thank you for coming.
Grief has taught me to feel my emotions. Unfortunately. Yeah.
It does. Yeah. Let everybody know where they can reach out to you or find you on social media if they want to follow you.
Absolutely. So, Tamil Curtis has a universal tag across all socials, which is It's Lady Tamil, ITSLADYTMIL. That's on Facebook, that's on Instagram, that's on TikTok, that's on Snapchat, that's on X, that's on Threads, that's on Spill. I am It's Lady Tamil across multiple social platforms.
Wonderful. I'm very proud of you. I love you very much. Thank you for coming. You can always come back. I look forward to that. And thank you all, audience. Thank you all for being with us.
Thank you all.
I hope you found some wisdom in it. I hope you laughed a little bit. And I will see you all again next week for another episode of the Love Again podcast. Bye-bye.